Welcome back to Clarity Convos for Wedding Pros podcast. I am your host, Aislinn, and I want to start this episode out by saying a huge thank you. If you are a new listener, this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much for joining us. If you are a reoccurring listener and you have even subscribed or reviewed this podcast, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here and supporting this podcast. It has been really, really fun for me to create and such a cool medium for me. I didn't realize how much I would love podcasting until I got into it. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, I really, really enjoy this. So I just wanted to start this out by saying thank you before we get into today's episode. So the other thing I want to do before we get into today's episode is celebrate one of my clients. So one of my clients was a guest speaker recently on a panel for female entrepreneurs. She was able to share her journey as a photographer and share different ways to work with her while she was a panelist. And I'm so excited for her because we have been working on her launch strategy for her course that's going to be coming out later, I don't know, maybe this summer, I believe. And I'm so excited because this guest speaking was a really wonderful way for her to build interest in her program. And so it was really cool for her to share that she was a guest speaker, but not only that she was able to use that guest speaking gig as a way to promote something that she has coming down the line. And it was a really cool experience for her. So I'm just really, really pleased and so excited for her. So I'm celebrating you. So excited. Cannot wait for what's to come. It's going to be really amazing. So today's topic, we are going to be talking about how to exit from the wedding industry, which I feel like is probably going to be like kind of a funny topic, like a little weird, because we are a wedding professional podcast. Like it's literally called Clarity Convos for Wedding Pros. So for me to be like, yeah, I'm going to tell you how to exit the wedding industry seems a little bit odd. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is actually because something like my clients come to me for is making big transitions in their life. So I've had clients who they want to know how to transition from one career to another, or they want to know how to create more revenue streams so that they can retire from the wedding industry if they wanted to, or that they could have less weddings but be paid more. So all of these things kind of like coincide in this topic of how to make an exit strategy. Because if you are planning on retiring, or you're planning on making a big pivot or any kind of big change in your business, it really helps to have a strategy in place before you go into it. So I'm going to give you guys a brief history of how I retired from the wedding industry and give you a little bit of history on like what that looked like, what some of the thought processes were, how I made sure that my clients were really well taken care of, and how I navigated some of the really hard conversations that I had during that season as I was transitioning. So as many of you know, I was a luxury wedding photographer for 13 years. I moved my business across the country like 5 times, like throughout the different years that I was a wedding photographer. I was published in Martha Stewart Weddings multiple times. I was published in Brides. Like I had a great career, 13 years of an amazing career. And there hit a point where I was like, just kind of ready to try something else. I felt like I had hit this mastery level. And I also felt like I was being called to do something with other talents and gifts that I have. So when I made that decision, it made it make sense that I would be retiring from my wedding career. So I'll just give you a brief, like kind of history of like where we're at and kind of bring you into where we hit that exit strategy point. So in 2021, we moved to Colorado. We had lived in Alabama for about 5 years and we moved across the country to Colorado. And it was a very big decision for us to do that. We didn't have any family out here. We didn't have any careers out here. We hit a point where we were done living in Alabama because we had gone through some pretty emotional stuff with trying to build houses out there that just did not work out. And so during 2021, I second shot for a friend in Colorado, and she invited me to second shoot for her in 2022. So because I knew I was moving to Colorado, I had asked her if I could second shoot for her in, I believe it was like September, October of 2021. And she said yes. And so when I went out there, she asked if I wanted to second shoot for her when I got out here the following year. And I was like, absolutely. What this did was it gave me the safety that I needed to explore other options. So I was still taking on weddings in 2021. And I had no idea that I was going to retire the next year. Like that was not even a thought that had crossed my mind at that point. So when she invited me to second shoot for her all of 2022, this gave me the safety I needed to explore coaching It gave me the safety I needed to explore getting weddings on my own without a lot of like financial pressure. And it really gave me the safety to decide what I truly wanted. I was able to explore these things because I knew I had the financial stability of second shooting for someone else without having to like get my weddings like figured out here before I moved out here. So in 2022, in the early part of 2022, I moved to Colorado. And during this time, I had already had multiple 10K months just from coaching. And I was starting to realize that, to be totally frank, I enjoyed coaching more than weddings. And it wasn't that I was like burnt out. It was more just this like deep sense of fulfillment that I was getting from coaching other female professionals, like wedding professionals and entrepreneurs, that I was like, oh, maybe, I don't know, like maybe I don't want to do weddings. Like I love my wedding clients. They're all incredible, but like maybe I don't want to do this. So in April of 2022, I had some really deep conversations with my husband and we talked for hours and hours and hours. And I remember driving around a lot and just like talking about like, okay, but what does this mean? Like, what are we doing here? And in April of 2022, I made the decision to stop photographing weddings. I was still getting inquiries at this time. I was still getting very good wedding inquiries at this time. So it kind of felt like from an outside perspective, it didn't really make sense. But in my heart, in April of 2022, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I have done all the things I really wanted to do in this career. I think I'm done. And when I say I'd done all the things I wanted to do in that career, I had been published in Martha Stewart Weddings twice. I'd been published in Brides. I had been published in Southern Weddings. I had photographed people that were absolutely just the most amazing humans ever. I had photographed across the country. I had done all of these things and made really deep connections with people. I really felt very complete. And I want you guys to think about this right now in your wedding career or whatever career you have, if you're not in the wedding industry. Do you feel this sense of completion when it comes to your career? Or do you feel like I'm not done yet? There's more out there for me. I am not done yet. And just asking yourself that question and kind of plugging into like what comes up for you can really, really give you some beautiful answers as to like what you want to do next. So I decided in April of 2022 that I was going to stop taking weddings. And that meant, okay, if I'm not taking on weddings anymore, I have to figure out A, how to tell all my clients. And then B, I need to figure out some kind of exit strategy because otherwise I'm just floundering and doing this without any kind of like strategy or any kind of plan. So in May through June of 2022, I referred out all the inquiries I got. Every single inquiry I got, I didn't tell people that I wasn't taking on weddings anymore. I just said I wasn't available. And what I also decided was that I was going to wait to tell people and announce this publicly until after I had my very last wedding at the end of July in 2022. So in May and June, I referred out all the inquiries I got. I didn't tell people. I actually had people asking me during that time, like, oh, like, how's wedding season? Like, how are you booking weddings for next year? And I would just kind of have to like, I don't know, like be very evasive about it. I told some of my close friends, but I really didn't tell like people that I didn't know very well. I would just say something along the lines of like, yeah, like really busy. Like, I'm excited. How's your wedding season going? So in May through June, I was able to refer out all the inquiries. I decided to wait until my last wedding to announce anything. And then what I started to do at that point was draft a plan for telling my clients. Here's what I want you to hear. I drafted a plan to tell my clients because I never wanted anyone to feel blindsided. I wanted them to hear it from me, and I wanted them to hear it from me with background information and also this sense of you're going to be taken care of. So I didn't want to announce this on social media and that be the first way that somebody, like one of my clients, found out that I was retiring, because I just felt like that would just be so cruel to them. And I didn't want to do that to them. So this was the time where I started to create my actual exit strategy. So if you're creating an exit strategy, this is what mine looked like. The first thing I needed to do was tell my 2022 clients first. They were the first priority. So at this time, we're talking like May, June of 2022. My last wedding that I was primary photographer was the end of July. So I wanted to make sure that at the end of July, those clients were the very first people to know, kind of in like the public sector. So I made a very beautiful email. It was very beautiful that I sent to them first before I emailed any of our other clients. And the email basically explained we are so grateful for the past 13 years of an incredible career. I cannot explain to you how meaningful it was to be a part of all these different weddings that we've been a part of. Here's what's going on. We are, and I say we because my husband was part of my team at the time. We are retiring from weddings at the end of the year, but I want you to know that this is not going to impact your wedding whatsoever, but you are the first people that we're telling, and we cannot wait to celebrate with you on your wedding day. So that was the one that I sent to my clients that they were getting married in July. We also had a pretty good relationship with those clients already. So it was really easy for me to send that email and have it be very personal. But some of the other clients we had, they got a template email. So we sent our 2022 clients first. We let them know first. And then we made a template to all of our wedding clients. And I'm talking about literally every wedding client that I ever had from 2010 through 2022. They got a template email from us, and it was slightly personalized for each of them. And what that email did was it explained, I'm retiring. I'm so grateful that I got to spend time with you. And I'm so grateful that you gave me the honor of being your wedding photographer. And it was so meaningful to me. Here are your next steps. And here's how to preserve your images in multiple places. Here's how to download your images. If you don't have access to your gallery anymore, please send us an email back and we will make sure you have access to that. And we wanted to let them know that they would have access to their galleries for one more year. So it was July of 2022 when we sent out this email. July, I think we said it was the 30th of 2023 that the galleries would be closed down. So they need to download their images, preserve their images, because after that point, the galleries will no longer be accessible to the public. And we also requested that everyone email us back and reply back to that email so that we knew that they got the information, because I don't know about you, but I don't have the same email that I had in 2010. So we wanted to make sure that everyone got the email, because I was just using all the information that I had to send out these emails. So after this is still part of my exit strategy. After this, I photographed my very last wedding at the end of July. And those clients were so incredible. I still think back to how lucky I was that those were my last clients, because they made the entire day so much fun. And at the end of the night, they cried with me. And we had this really beautiful moment of just they were so grateful that I was there for them on their wedding day. But I was just also so grateful that they were my last clients that I got to serve in that way. And we just had this moment of just so much gratitude for each other. So after my last wedding in July, I announced it publicly. So I had all of this stuff drafted out in emails and at notes app and stuff like that. So that none of this was done on a whim. All of it was all drafted out and planned out, because I wanted to make sure that I was explaining things in a way that made sense. And it also made me feel a lot more secure in my decision to retire. So this is what happened. And this is how it went for me. So I did all of these things, and I occasionally would get people who would come back and say oh man, I had a couple of clients who, they emailed me back, and their weddings were years and years ago. And they're we're so sad that you're not going to be photographing weddings anymore, because, nobody's going to get to get your talent anymore after this. And I was yeah, I mean, thanks. But I'm also really excited about where we're going. So this was my strategy, and it worked really beautifully. And it helped me to create a roadmap for myself and my clients, the ones who were involved with this, because I didn't want anyone to feel blindsided. And I wanted to also make sure that I knew what I was doing. And I had this, I had a Google Doc, which, I'm not even surprised that I had such a long Google Doc, but it really did help me a lot, actually, to make sure that I was kind of staying on track with what I wanted to do. So here's where I want to kind of get out of my story and get more into where you are and get into more of your story. If you're considering making a really big shift in your business, or maybe you're even thinking about retiring, the conversations that you have in the wedding industry are honestly probably going to be the hardest ones. Your clients, if you do it well and you send them a, fairly well thought out email, they're not going to come back and be like, oh, like, how dare you? That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But the wedding industry conversations, the people who are like kind of more like acquaintances, even those ones are going to be the hardest to talk to because they're going to have their opinions and their projections, and they're not going to necessarily understand why you're doing this. So I recommend that if you're planning on retiring or you're planning on making a huge pivot in your business or you're planning on doing anything big with your business, I recommend that you get behind the decision first before you start telling other people. Get behind your decision first before you start telling other people. And I'm not saying you can't tell like, your partner or your best friends or whatever, but like the kind of more acquaintance people, like the people who are like not in your inner circle, those are the ones who are going to have like kind of strong opinions, and they're going to have like projections that they're going to project on you of like what they would do. Those are the ones that I don't want them to sway your decision, and I don't want them to sway your conviction. So I heard a lot of this when I was retiring, and like when I decided to retire, I heard a lot of like things from wedding industry professionals that were kind of along the lines of, yeah, but you're still going to take on 1 or 2 weddings, right? Or, yeah, but you're so talented. Like, why would you stop doing weddings? I heard that one quite a bit. And I heard several people say something along the lines of like, well, I could just never retire. I don't know how you're doing. I could never retire. And if I didn't have an exit strategy, these questions may have made me question everything. If I didn't have an exit strategy, I might have let those questions shake my conviction in the decision that I had made for myself and my family. And all of the people who were asking these questions were really kind, and they were definitely well-meaning, and the questions were asked really kindly. Like none of these were like barbs or, meant to be like mean questions, like at all. All of these questions were meant really kindly. So what I did in order to answer these questions, because I knew they were coming, I knew when I decided to retire and I started to tell people that these kind of questions would show up. So I had a very like simple but kind of rehearsed answer that I would tell people. And obviously it doesn't answer every single question, but it was something along these lines. So if someone asked me like, oh yeah, but like, you're still going to take on 1 or 2 weddings, right? I would say something along the lines of like, thank you so much for your kind words, depending on what they had said before that. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm really excited about what's coming next for me. At this moment, I don't have any plans to come back. And if I did, I really want to do something that feels really fun for me. And that was it. That's all I ever had to say. And they might still come back and be like, yeah, but you might still do 1 or 2. And I would say, you know what? At this time, that's not the plan. Maybe in the future, but that's not the plan right now, because I don't owe them an explanation, but also I want to be kind in my answer. And I also want it to come from a place of, yeah, like I, at this time, do not have plans to do that. It's not where I want to go. It's not what I want to do right now. And I also trust that in the future, if I decide to do something different, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to hold on to like convictions that I've had in the past just because I've had them in the past. And that's the thing, though, is that when we start to tell other wedding industry professionals that we are retiring or that we are making huge pivots in our career or doing anything like that, it's not going to make sense to the outside world. It doesn't make sense to the outside world. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm talented, I am well connected in the wedding industry. Why would I walk away from a career that I built over the past decade and a half? Right? Because that's what the outside world sees. They're like, dude, like, no, you're young, you're healthy, you're talented. Like, people in the wedding industry. Like, why would you walk away from something you've been building for a decade and a half? It does not need to make sense to the outside world. Your plans do not need to make sense to the outside world. They need to make sense to you. I needed my plans to make sense to me, not to anyone else that I was explaining them to. Because here's the truth. The truth is, I trust my timeline. I trust that everything I'm doing is adding up and will continue to get better and better and better and better. And I trust that my desire to lean into other gifts and talents that I have is leading to something amazing. The skills, relationships, talents, and experiences I had in the wedding industry are not just going to go away because I retire. I believe in trusting myself and leading myself. And I didn't need to wait for the wedding industry to tell me what to do with my career. I go first. I didn't want to wait to be like 35 and be like, oh, it's time to retire because that's what people do. I wanted to do it when I was ready to do it. I wanted to retire when it felt like it was the season to retire for me. If you see someone else in the wedding industry who's charging more, I want you to celebrate that. If you see someone else in the wedding industry who's investing in education, I want you to celebrate that. If you see someone else in the wedding industry who is mastering a new skill, I want you to celebrate that. If you see someone in the wedding industry who has decided to retire, I want you to celebrate them. And if you see someone in the wedding industry doing something that doesn't align with your business, I want you to get back into your own lane. I invite you to consider this. What is on the other side of the thing that you really, really want to do? What in your life feels so juicy, but not quite possible for you? Because that's what retirement was for me. It was this like super juicy, like, oh, that feels so exciting. That feels so cool, but also like totally not possible for me. What if you just decided to get in the room of people doing things that seem wild and impossible? Who might you become in the process? And a very gentle reminder to any wedding pro who is listening to this, just because I chose to retire does not mean that you have to do the same. Just because I chose to do something in my business does not mean that you have to do the same. My results in my business are because I lead myself. Your results in your business are because you lead yourself. And I'm trusting you to do what feels good to you and what feels right for you, making the decisions that feel right for you, even if they don't make sense to the outside world. So if you're looking for an actual exit strategy from the wedding industry, here's exactly what I'm going to recommend. First, you have got to decide what your life looks like and like what you want it to look like. Right now, what do you want your life to look like? And then you have to decide you are ready for more and that you are open to what that can look like. And once you've made that decision and once you've decided like, yeah, I'm ready for more, whatever it is, I'm ready, you have to start looking for the safety you need in order for those decisions to come to life. So I had second shooting. Like that was the reason, that was one of the biggest reasons why I was able to retire from weddings during the season that I was able to retire and do it really gracefully and do it really like on my own terms. There was no pressure. There was no like frantic energy. It was very, very like well thought out and very grounded energy. And the reason I could do that was because I had safety in other revenue streams that I had. I had my coaching at the time. I had second shooting at the time. I had some other financial revenue streams that were coming in at the time. All of those things gave me the safety to start to look around and say, what do I actually want? So start looking for safety you need to make those decisions. This might look like second shooting. It could look like a coaching revenue stream. It could look like a course, workshops, a corporate job. If you need to go get a corporate job, that's fine. What do you need in order to make the kind of big, bold decisions for your life? And then I want you to go make it happen. What do you actually need in place to leap? Who can help you make that big leap, make that big transition? And then once you've decided, all right, this is what I'm doing, and I have the safety in order to do it, I want you to make an exit strategy or a pivot strategy. And this can literally look like just a Google Doc. Like it does not have to be fancy. It could literally just be a Google Doc of what is next for you. And then here's the fun part. You got to actually follow through on that strategy. And then you start telling people, start following through on that strategy, creating these things, and then start telling people. You can tell like your close friends and your close proximity people, but I'm saying like, don't go announce it on social media. Like, hey, I think I might retire in October. Like that'd be cool. Right? Like that's not the energy that we want to do these things in. We want to do them from this very grounded place. And that way you have a lot more conviction in your decision because it's coming from a place of like, I know this is my next step. So that's your exit strategy. Here's my final words of advice around this. You inspire people with your bravery. If you decide to retire and you do it in a grounded way, like that makes you brave. That is courageous to do that. Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people wait until they are burned out to retire. A lot of people will wait until like they have like one of those like really chaotic, stressful weddings and they're like, oh, I'm done. No more. No more. I'm done. You are inspiring people with your bravery, and you're going to inspire people with your commitment to living a life that you find joy in. So if your heart is desiring something different, now is your time to start exploring what that can look like. Because here's the thing, like the brain does not like change. So when we are deciding to make these big changes in our life, a lot of times like we'll do it like DIY and it takes way longer and it feels a lot more frantic. I recommend that if you're making really big pivots or transitions in your life, that you find support. Every step of the way during my exit strategy, I had a mastermind of powerful women cheering me on and my husband right by my side. So every time I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? I was able to like really ground back into like, nope, this is my decision. This is what we are doing. And really ground back into like, this is what I want to do. And I know that this is the next step in my plan. And this is the next step in kind of the big thing that I want to do with my life. So if you're planning on making a big shift, maybe it's time to get a support network or a private coaching even. And if that's you, I want you to take a peek at the show notes or send me a DM on Instagram and let's connect, because I have been that for so many of my clients. I've had clients who they had 9-to-5 jobs and they also had like wedding planning businesses. And we were able to help them transition out of their 9-to-5 job and like retire from their 9-to-5 job and go full time with their wedding planning business. Like I've done that for several clients now. I had other clients who they were ready to retire from the wedding industry, but they didn't want to do it in a way that felt like frantic. They wanted to do it in a way that felt really grounded. So I've really been able to help a lot of women in this way where they're making really big transitions in their life and they're making really big pivots in their life. So it's something that I love helping women with. So if that's you, if you're like, maybe I do want to retire, or maybe I do want to make a really big pivot, that's something that I love helping you with. I want you to know that I am cheering you on. In whatever you are creating, in whatever you are doing, I am cheering you on. If you decide to exit the wedding industry, I'm cheering you on. If you decide I'm in it for another 15 years, I'm cheering you on. I want you to choose what feels good for you. I want you to ask yourself the questions of, what do I want to create next? And what does that look like? And start to see like what comes up for you, and asking yourself that question I asked earlier in the podcast. Do I feel complete, or do I feel like there's more for me? And seeing what comes up for you. So I hope you guys found this podcast episode helpful and that you were able to maybe get some insight into like what it looks like to actually retire from a very long career. And if you are interested in exiting the wedding career, like I am cheering you on in that. If you're thinking like, nah, I think I'm good actually, I hope that you are finding conviction in that as well. Either way, I'm cheering you on. I love you guys. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful, beautiful day.